You're listening to The Streaming Wars, the podcast that discusses all of the latest happenings regarding your favorite streaming services. Find out which service is winning the war this time around.
Hello everyone, welcome to the latest episode of The Streaming Wars. I am Dustin, and I'm joined by Tony, and we are here to cover the news. That's right, now that we have reached the conclusion of our current state of episodes, we are now going to be jumping into current events, and we're going to be discussing the latest from all of the streaming services, the streaming wars, and different things that are happening, updates, and such. So we've got a bunch of different topics. The first one we're going to be covering, so these are all topics that came between October 4th and October 10th for your reference. Any of the articles that we were talking about here will be linked in the show notes, as well as if you're listening to this on YouTube or any of the other platforms that we post the podcast on. Links will be in the description, so you can check those articles out if you are so inclined. But the big topic, of course, came out the end of last week, which is the news that Disney is going to be banning ads for Netflix from all of their platforms, which means you're not going to see any Netflix ads on ABC, ABC Family, or well, now it's called Freeform. You're not going to see it on any of the FX networks anymore because Disney owns those. You're not going to see it on, I don't think you were seeing it on Disney Channel or anything like that, or Disney Junior or any of the other Disney-specific channels. But basically, the big one is ABC. You're not going to see any ads for Netflix content. Now, this isn't... Now, of course, a lot of people out there are making a really big deal about how, things are really heating up now because Disney's banning Netflix ads. The real big thing, the real driving point for this is actually during award season. Netflix tends to do a lot of ads for some of their highly acclaimed shows to drive more awareness to people in general. And Netflix will purchase ads showcasing some of their big, highly acclaimed shows and say, hey, look, check us out. And you'll see this during Emmy season. You'll see this during Oscar season. That tends to be what happens. But that's not to say that Netflix, we all know that Netflix will always purchases ads for upcoming shows that they have got debuting on the service, such as the original series or the original films that Netflix has. So my question to you is, do you really think is this really a shot across the bow as everyone's making it out to be?
No, I think this is good business. I think it's smart business. I don't think there's any other way to look at it. I mean, one, we're not going to get any more ads on Netflix. You know, if I know another ad's going to replace it, but I'm all for less ads in the world. Second,
amen to that.
Yeah, I know. I don't think it matters. I mean, I always question just the efficacy of like digital marketing ads and ads like television ads, but that's more of like a conceptual philosophical point of view of you're spending all this money, but are people really clicking? Like, not really. Just, I don't think people care. I think the people that know Netflix's stuff, they know it. And if they don't, they don't. I mean, you don't have like HBO buying ads for, some crazy acclaimed TV show. And it's like, it might be crazy and acclaimed and it might be awesome, but you won't really see it. I never really saw Game of Thrones, commercials until for this last season, season 8, when it was going to end. This isn't, shots fired. This isn't the streaming wars beginning. It's one, it already began. Two, it's no hostility. They're rivals. Bob Iger stepped off the board of Apple the day that they announced the streaming service. Apple came in like $2 right underneath Apple's price. Disney set the bar really low to outperform Netflix. Like, it's not personal. It's just business.
I agree. And I think the thing is, there were so many people talking about this online over the past week that it was really the only thing that people were talking about when it comes to the streaming services. And that's frustrating because I think that anytime you have one of the companies that's behind a streaming service doing something that negatively affects another company who's behind a streaming service, we're going to hear about this. And that is the part to me that's unfortunate, because I don't really need to know, is Disney going to pull ads for Warner Brothers films? Why? Well, why not? Because if the real reason is that they just don't want to advertise the same, the same content that's available elsewhere, Why hasn't Disney banned ads for Universal movies or Disney or Warner Brothers movies or Paramount movies? Like, the idea of this, it seems as if Disney is directly targeting Netflix. I'll admit that, obviously, because they're saying
the biggest real competitor. I mean, they own Hulu, so that's not really a competitor. Apple's in infancy. WB, not even in the game. Who cares about NBC? You know what I mean? It's like Netflix is they're going after Netflix. They're not going after these other companies. They're going for the big dog. It makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't honestly blame them for going after Netflix. I mean, honestly, I don't think that anybody's going to be coming around outside of Disney for the immediate future and being able to compete directly with Netflix. While HBO Max has a good chance of being really successful, in my opinion, I don't
whenever it launches.
Right, whenever it launches in 2020. But the big thing is with that is that it's almost guaranteed to have a higher price point, which is automatically going to have problems with it being able to compete with a service that's lower in cost. Same thing with it competing with Disney Plus. So, I mean, when it comes to that regard, Disney's the only one who can really take Netflix on immediately. They've already showed that with the price point of the service. Some of the features that they've announced, the fact that you'll be able to stream on up to 4 devices, Ultra HD, and be able to have like up to 7 user accounts per user accounts, meaning you can have 7 profiles. Netflix has a limit of 5 profiles. Netflix has a limit of, I believe it's 5 screens or 4 screens if you're in the top tier, the top tier of the service. And
you only get tier, it's just 2.
Yeah, and the Ultra HD is only available at top tier as well. So, like, Disney's already directly going after Netflix by having a smaller price and offering a lot of these added things that Netflix upcharges for. I don't think it's not a secret that Disney is going after Netflix, and them just saying that they're not going to put ads on it. Honestly, this is just them continuing to do what they've been doing for a while, which is directly go after Netflix, because that's the business that they're going into. They're looking at Netflix as the big dog, and they're looking to take down the big dog. That said, let's move into some other news topics for the past weeks, because while that one was getting tons of coverage, there was a couple of other things that were popping up here or there. So the one thing that did pop up, there was a rumor spreading around online. This rumor comes from Mac Rumors, and they said that this was from a report in Financial Times that Apple is considering bundling their services for 1 monthly flat rate. This would be the likes of Apple TV Plus, Apple Music. There's also word that they could end up including Apple News Plus and Apple Arcade. You include all of those services right now, it would roughly come out to about $30 a month. So the rumor out there is that they could be offering all of the services together for, a price around $10 or $12 or something like that, which, like I've said before, I'm not an Apple user, but if I was, and I was using some of these products, the ability to bundle these services would be great. Just like if I was using Hulu and I was planning on signing up for Disney Plus, they offer a bundle included with Disney Plus for $12.99, which is a good deal. I mean, like, there's no reason to have more content available, or in this case with Apple, to have more services available for a lower price point. There's nothing wrong with that. And it would get people to sign up for some of these other services that they maybe aren't signing up for.
It might just be the time that we're recording this episode, but my first thought is going to the Progressive episode, the commercial with Flow. Talk about bundling car insurance. I'm just imagining that right now. I know some people who are interested in like Apple Arcade, and I get it, but for like mass appeal and that business model, the only other asset besides Apple TV Plus is Apple Music, and I think that's frankly Apple's most successful streaming service, and it is a big competitor to Spotify. And I think getting essentially you're gonna get Apple Music plus Apple TV Plus. If you're interested in Apple's content in terms of like the Apple TV Plus content, I think it's a great save, but it's not going to make me jump further for it. That's not going to move the needle for me, and it might move the needle for some people, but that's not really, I don't think it's going to be a game changer per se. I think it's a smart move, but I don't think it's anything like crazy and special.
I don't have anything else to say on that, so let's jump into the next thing. This is a real quick one. The studio heads that were in charge of the Peacock service basically changed overnight on October 7th. It was announced that the former head, Bonnie Hammer, she was serving as the chairman for the streaming service Peacock. She's moving over to the company's newly combined studio efforts where Universal TV and Universal Content Productions have been centralized. She's going to be in charge of that. A Comcast executive, Matt Strauss, will be taking over the streaming service. The interesting thing, at least to me, is that in the article, this was on The Hollywood Reporter, they specifically state that they are specifically developing a ad-supported system, which again goes back to what we were talking about in the last episode about how this does feel like a CBS All Access situation where it is specifically designed to be lower priced and ad supported. I did look up CBS All Access. I can't remember if we mentioned this on the last episode, but they have two tiers. One where you get to watch ads, but along with the content, and the content is just exclusive to the service. And then a higher tier where without ads, with the same content. So there's that. Every once in a while in some of these articles, you'll see something pop up that hasn't popped up. The only thing that I saw was they said that Peacock will launch in the spring with over 15,000 hours of programming. Unfortunately, it specifically states that The Office and Parks and Recreation will both be included in the libraries, which is not true. Office will not be there until the end of 2020, and Parks and Recreation will not be there until the end of 2021. So there's that. So you got to always take these articles with a grain of salt, because while it doesn't specifically say it won't be, it'll be on the service at the beginning, you got to be careful about that. But they also said that they brought up Saved by the Bell and Battlestar Galactica and Punky Brewster and some of the other scripted originals, but we already knew a lot of that stuff, and we've talked about that in the past. So that's that. There's not a whole lot, but whenever, to be fair, we are, let's see, they said that they're going to be launching in April, so we are less than 7 months out, and we are getting a studio shakeup. Now, at the same time, recently, while we were recording a lot of our current state of episodes, HBO shifted some executives around in a bunch of different places too, and their service is expected to launch sooner. At this point, I would hope that there is at least a firm plan for what's going on. And I imagine Peacock, if they're going in the direction of what CBS All Access is doing, and they're just offering a lot of content. I did notice also CBS All Access, they have movies on there as well, and they have content that rolls in and out every single month as well, which is in the same vein of a service like DC Universe, where they have content that comes and goes. Amazon has content that comes and goes. Netflix has content that comes and goes. That's not their original stuff. So I thought that was interesting, because I'm not familiar with CBS All Access outside of the original shows that I hear news about. So to see that they had some classic movies on there, it was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So
I saw the tagline that there are going to be shakeups, and I was really hoping they would change the name. But then I read the rest of that article.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Sorry.
This isn't news. Companies change. I don't think it's anything to worry about right now. If this came out, given 6 months of the service and there'd be low numbers, subscriber numbers, then I would be a little bit worried. People change, and it looks like, no one's being demoted. It looks like, it's just restructuring, and people are moving on to bigger and better places. So the streaming service is going to be okay. We're going to eventually get, Parks and Rec and The Office. It's kind of crazy. I think it was, it was yesterday, where it was 10 years ago when Jim and Pam got married. Yeah, small world. Anyway, it's all okay.
All right, so then switching over to another service, Hulu recently announced that starting on October 7th, which is already passed at this point, Hulu subscribers on the no ads tier can now save shows and movies for offline viewing. So this is basically a feature that is available on other services like Netflix and Amazon Prime, where you can save shows, basically download them to your computer and watch them within the app when you don't have access to the internet. Obviously, this comes into play when you are on an airplane or you're traveling and you don't have access to internet.
Just not on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. So I've actually used the feature every time I travel. I normally download some stuff off Netflix and Amazon Prime so that I can watch it while I'm on the plane. But also because when I'm in a hotel, you don't always have the greatest internet connection. So it's nice to have stuff just available to watch without having to worry about not having stuff in general. So Hulu will now have that. Also, conveniently, Disney, when Disney Plus launches, they're going to have a download feature for the shows as well. That was something that they talked about ages ago. So that feature will be on there. So it only makes sense that Hulu offers the same thing that Disney Plus will be. Interestingly, I saw a graph recently that compared a lot of the streaming services, and I didn't realize this because I don't typically use the HBO On Demand app. I just typically use the service through my cable provider. But it said that HBO doesn't offer downloadable content, which I found interesting because if HBO Max launches, you would assume that would be something, especially given the price point of what they're doing. The last thing you want is a service that can't be used unless you have internet access. So I sincerely hope that is something that does change, because if that is the case with the new service and you're paying more than you are right now for HBO, that really needs to be something that is incorporated into the new service.
Once again, Hulu is catching up to Netflix. I think it's about time you should be able to do this. Hulu's always been a little bit, behind. It doesn't help that for the longest time they had three owners, essentially three big owners. And then, if you don't know about Hulu's structure, it used to be owned by essentially three of like the five biggest studios, and the other people had certain stakes in it. But the majority shares were split into basically three companies. Like Disney, I think it's NBC, and then Fox. They had like the biggest shares, and then the other people have other parts.
Yeah, the only other company that had another share was Warner. Warner had a 10% stake, and everybody else had a 30% stake. Disney.
I just remember that I couldn't watch How I Met Your Mother because it doesn't play well with CBS.
Yeah.
That's all I remember of it.
When Disney bought Fox, they got their shares, then they became majority, and there was a deal between NBC Universal and Disney where Disney is buying their stake back over 5 years, and Warner obviously got bought out by AT&T, and AT&T sold their 10% stake to Disney too. So by I think it's like 2025, Disney will 100% own Hulu. For the time being, they are controlling everything that's happening over there, and they're controlling the content and the licensing deals and everything, and NBC is just kind of sitting back and collecting money for the time being while the transition takes place over the next 5 years. So
they've had three big owners, and that's a little bit different from having one major stakeholder and everything else. So they've always been a little bit behind just because, communication breaks down, and the more people you have to talk to, the crazier it is. And so they've always been a little bit behind. I think now they're catching up. Offline viewing mode, I think, is great. I think they can take some lessons to learn from Netflix. I think the biggest issue with offline viewing, if you don't know, is pirating. Just because I download on my phone, I don't want to transfer that to my computer, and then from there I can give a thumb drive to everyone I know, and all of a sudden people are going to have Game of Thrones season 8. They don't want to have that happen, and so trying to implement DRM, digital rights media, I think that's the acronym, but anyway, DRM protection. That's really hard to implement and to get it correct and right and usable for everyone involved. Content creators, Hulu itself, the software engineering team that has to implement it, and then us, the user. So there's this whole balance that they have to play with. It is pretty hard. Netflix just has a lot of people and lots of cash to figure it out very quickly. Hulu, probably not so much with direction, stuff like that. So that's why they're behind. Yeah, I think also Disney's going to use this to, okay, let's take the lessons we learned from Hulu, then let's apply it for Disney Plus. So it's just staging ground for really Disney Plus.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is there was something that I saw recently. This isn't directly related to what we're specifically talking about, but it has to do with Netflix. And I wanted to just mention this because we didn't necessarily talk about this when we were talking about Netflix in the current state of episode, but we did talk about how there's a lot of content out there that is the older stuff. The Office, Parks and Recreation, those shows, they will bring, what is the reason why Netflix will spend as much money as they do on content like that? Why is HBO shelling out $500 million for Big Bang Theory to be on HBO Max? Why is Friends going to be on HBO Max? Why are these companies shelling out so much money? And I read something somewhere that said that that type of programming specifically helps to keep subscribers around and not have them subscribe and leave. But the exclusive content will actually drive more people to join the service. So they need to have more exclusive content, because that's the stuff you can market, and that's the stuff that can drive people to the service. Whether it doesn't have to be just Netflix. Disney Plus, they're really pushing a lot of their original series that they have. That's what they're focusing on. They're not focusing on the thousands of hours of content that they have that will be also available. They're focusing on the stuff that was made exclusive for that, because that's the stuff that the hardcore Disney fans, the casual Disney fans, or just fans who, or, you know, just people who like watching shows and movies and stuff, they're all going to be able to appreciate if that's the type of content that they want to see. And I saw that and I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And I think in a lot of different terms and times we had discussed this, but not put it all together like that. So I think a lot of times when you look at the content that they're producing, like, for example, as you're listening to this, then there's a show coming. There's Breaking Bad is releasing a movie called El Camino on Netflix, and they've been promoting that pretty heavily over the past couple of weeks. And it's because that's the only place you're going to be able to see it. I don't even think it's going to end up on AMC eventually, even though AMC, I think, partially funded the show. It's one of those things that's interesting because it is that original content that will drive new subscribers, but it's the old content that'll actually keep people around. And I personally don't watch a lot of old content. I have watched plenty of shows over the years that are not original. I just watched the full series of Office earlier this year, but it's not something that I would immediately think, let me go check to see some old show that I haven't seen or that I need to check out, a second time around. That's not me, but I know that there's a lot of people who are like that, and a lot of people, it will influence their decision of whether to stay with the service or just subscribe for that original content only.
This is something I kind of realized from the start, is this dynamic between original and old content, bingeable content. I'm a little split. Like, I get the whole premise of spending new money to get new subscribers, but then you have this other stuff to, keep them hooked. Like, I'm very tempted just to get, NBC Peacock. Oh, I hate that name. Very tempted to get Peacock just because, like, it does have The Office and Parks and Rec, two shows that I really do like. And yeah, Netflix is coming out with a whole lot of like new original content, but as interesting as it is, I'm not sure I want to keep paying a recurring fee for it. I can sign up for 1 month and watch all this stuff and then call it quits and then move on to something else. So I think that these companies have to play a balance between like original and then, older stuff. And I think that's why there's been this bidding war on all these different shows. Now there's been some research to see, like, is it really worth it? That's interesting to look at. And out of all of Netflix's, out of all the consumption that people, use, people watch of Netflix, how much of that is spent towards certain properties? And I think it was like The Office was 7%, accounting for 7% of their whole total like bandwidth moved people watching it. Friends was like 4%. For a global company, that's a lot of network traffic. So I think, I'm split. I guess I'm optimistic about this new content that's coming out there from a lot of these studios. Disney, I'm excited just because of the properties that they have and how much time they're going to put into them and how they like actually work with like the movie franchises that they're kind of gelling with. But for these other companies, I'm not sure if it's really going to help them that much. I'm thinking of like Netflix has been the case for a long time. It's like, yeah, they keep coming out with original content, but is it really going to save them? I'm a little skeptical of that. And I think the Breaking Bad movie is going to be pretty awesome, but I'm not sure that's going to be worth to, I don't know how many subscribers that's going to bring in. Yeah, I'm just worried that a lot of these studios are just going to be, shelling out money to bring in new subscribers. What's the biggest thing in insurance markets, banking and whatever? It's, you want long-term customers, the long-term value. That's where these companies make their money. They don't make that much money, onboarding, customers. That takes money, marketing costs, fees, and other stuff like that. The long-term customers that keep recurring, that keep paying, recurrent payments, whatever. Those are the people that make the most money. And that's why having, such an extensive backlog that people do like and that they can binge watch, that's what keeps them happy. I just don't want companies to be biased toward growing too much and then kind of forgetting, okay, like these are the shows that, keep people around, and focus on those types of shows.
I agree. And we're going to be seeing a lot more content coming to these services and a lot more spending coming to the services. There was a report recently, I think there was a thing that came out today saying that Sony Pictures is now evaluating the direction of some of their upcoming film slate, in the sense of they're looking at some of the films that they had already had release dates for, but they have not started filming, and they're looking at it from a different perspective, in the sense of, can we sell the rights to the film to a streaming service up front rather than having to go the theatrical route, because it guarantees them money rather than taking the risk of having a film go on in the theater and become a flop. It'll be interesting to see if the next 5 years, how the movies that are being released in theaters, how that changes, because a lot of these streaming services are also going to affect that. We've already seen certain movies that, the one that immediately comes to mind is there was a movie that Warner Brothers made. It was called Mowgli. It was basically the story of the Jungle Book, but it was originally supposed to come in theaters. It did have a limited release, but Netflix ended up paying money to have the series, or to have the film, rather than it having like a wide release in theaters. To be fair, I didn't watch it, so I couldn't tell you, but I assume it's just like every other Jungle Book movie that tells a story about the Jungle Book, the original book. So, I mean, I see your perspective of, yes, you definitely need to have that content. But Netflix obviously is creating a lot more content at the immediate present, because as time progresses, even when they cancel the shows, they'll still be there. They'll have the previous seasons because they own those shows outright. It's not like the shows that they're currently licensing. So while it makes complete sense to market the new shows, if they don't end up being successful, it does just add to their overall library, which is what they will need in the future when it becomes much more of a cold war between these companies, and there's less and less companies working with each other to create content. The last news story that we're going to talk about is going to be talking about a service that I don't even think we've mentioned except for by name, which is Quibi. And if you're unfamiliar with Quibi, I'm going to give you a brief rundown of what it is, because it'll come up occasionally here or there, and it's mostly because of a lot of companies are backing this new streaming service, but it's not going to be a streaming service in the same vein as a lot of these other ones. So Quibi is a odd name, but it's specifically shortened from the phrase quick bites. And the person who founded it is Jeffrey Katzenberg, who previously worked at a variety of different companies. He helped found DreamWorks. He previously worked at Disney, and this is his current project. The CEO of Quibi is Meg Whitman, who previously CEO at eBay for 10 years and HP for a really long time before getting into politics, and now she's at Quibi as well. Quibi has raised over $1 billion, mostly from studios. There is a total of 11 investors, and every single one of them is a major Hollywood studio, including Disney, NBC Universal, Sony, Warner Media, and as well as the Alibaba Group, which is basically eBay of China. And they're creating a lot of content, but their whole platform is geared towards creating content that is less than 10 minutes long. So you take something like a movie that's like 2 hours long, and you break it up into 10-minute segments, where every 10 minutes, or it doesn't have to be exactly 10 minutes, but the idea is they're segments, you release them on a normal basis. What's really interesting is that they're planning, even though this is their method, and the idea behind this is that it's trying to appeal to younger viewers who watch YouTube videos and enjoy short form content, in the sense of they don't have a lot of time, or they want to get something through quickly. So there's a lot of companies behind what's happening here that are going to be creating content. But there was 2 companies specifically this week that announced that they're also going to be creating content. The first one is Telemundo, which is a company that's owned by NBC Universal. They're creating 2 shows targeting the Hispanic audience, while ESPN will also be creating a daily sports show for Quibi as well, which is interesting because ESPN has its own streaming service. So clearly, especially with all of these investors involved in Quibi, a lot of these companies are creating their own streaming services. You would think that this would be a competitor, but they're certainly not viewing it as a competitor. They're looking at it as a new opportunity to basically have content, a content distribution market. So I thought I'd bring it up mostly because I thought it was interesting. ESPN was announced earlier in the week, and then Telemundo was just announced today. But I thought it was interesting that ESPN, who, their whole thing is that they're selling this, they're selling their own service. Why would they go and create content for another service? And the reason is they're going to get paid.
They're losing subscribers. The bleeding has stopped a little bit. Look, we'll do a show about the Q3 financials. You're taking a preview for the future. ESPN's is doing okay compared to what it was, but they're losing subscribers. I mean, I think their highest rated talk show is like at 9:00 Central Time. So, but it's like inconvenient because no one's at home at that time to watch it. It's a very select audience at the moment. It's very niche. I mean, the audience is very interesting. The point I'm trying to make is they need to get themselves out there. They don't need to be just this we just do sports on this one channel, on this one service. It's, hey, we're the sports platform for the world, and
it's true. Yeah.
Let's get some advertising money. I've never heard of this company, and so preparing for the show, I was like, what is that? Sounds like a Q-tip company. But, understanding the business model, I think it's smart. I'm not sure how lucrative it's going to be, but, today's world is different from what it used to be. Even from what it was a few years ago with we're going to binge everything. And it's like, people still do that, but, we have our phones, we can download content for the future and watch it then. 10-minute bites. I can get all the news I need to in 10 minutes. That sounds good. What is interesting to me is this business model reminds me a lot of Snapchat. And I don't know if anyone's paying attention to Snapchat more than just actually using the app. They are kind of innovating how they do ads, how they do content. I mean, Kylie Jenner has a big Snapchat following channel. I don't have Snapchat. I don't follow her. Yeah, from what I've heard, she's a very big presence on there, and she drives a lot of revenue. You have a lot more celebrities, people that are doing this. I know ESPN has released some sound bites for Snapchat, a couple minute long segments. I know that they're starting to do this, quick 10-minute at most type show content, movies, TV shows, stuff like that. And so I wonder how popular this service is going to be, given Snapchat, given how Snapchat is everywhere in the new generation of people. I'm curious how Quibi is going to do and how it's going to compete. This new short content ideas movement is starting. It's interesting how you're going to have Snapchat on one side. Facebook, I think, is also sort of doing it, but they have their own problems and mess to deal with. And then you have all of these television studios on the other. We'll probably see in the future. Instagram will probably get into this business as well of creating content for their site and stories and stuff like that. And I think that's why, this Quibi company, given how they're going to do their app and how we're actually going to watch the service. And it's why Snapchat, it's why Instagram, I think that's why they're going to be a little bit more successful is they're targeting a whole different type of experience and creating a new experience for people to watch and to use. And when you see kind of the new things that Snapchat is doing and Instagram is starting to do, I think it's really going to change the market for, mobile users and advertising and content creating and stuff like that.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see how everything pans out for sure. Clearly, some of the large media companies are fully on board with this idea of creating new content. And it also goes back to there's some of these exact same studios were also trying to get and create channels with creators on YouTube and things like that because they understand that it is another distribution method of getting their content out there for people to do, and also not just their content but new content as well. All right, so with that being said, that is actually all of our news topics. Before we wrap up, I think I mentioned this previously, but initially I said, this was a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about. That's the stuff that everything we've talked about up to this point is stuff that we're going to be discussing very at length. But there is a slew of news related to the content that will be coming to the services or that's already on the services that we'll just quickly mention, as well as we'll give you a rundown of some of the new trailers and premiere dates that have been announced. There's a little bit more trailers than usual because New York Comic Con was this past weekend, and there was a bunch of trailers that were released for that. So again, show notes will have links to all of this stuff for more details. But as far as content news goes, the second season premiere of the show The End of the Effing World, which is a Netflix original, was announced. That show will be coming to Netflix on November 5th. There is a new show that will be coming from the Big Mouth creators. Big Mouth is a animated show geared towards adults that's on Netflix. There's going to be a new show called Human Resources that's actually a spin-off from Big Mouth. TBS's show Search Party is going to be moving over to HBO Max for seasons 3 and 4. The Dragon Prince season 3 on Netflix is coming on November 22nd. That was announced at New York Comic Con. Apple announced that they're adding, well, this is not actually confirmed at this point, but this is reported by the Hollywood Reporter, so it's almost practically confirmed at this point. So there's a good chance that they're securing a Christmas Carol music special featuring Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds.
First things I read, Apple is in negotiations to pick up Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds' musical reimagining of Charles Dickens' classic A Christmas Carol. I don't know about you, Dustin, but we're going to need to check that out because that just doesn't even sound right. A Christmas Carol is kind of a sad, somber movie, and you're going to have two extremely hilarious actors in it.
Unless, of course, that the direction that they go is completely the direction that you would not think they go, where it's like an interpretation of it, but it's all funny. We'll see. This is a project that has clearly been worked on outside of Apple, that Apple could just be, buying or, picking up so that they have more content.
Well, yeah. This has been going around for a while.
And honestly, it would make no sense, in my opinion, to have that be obtained now but not come out till next year. So this must be a project that has already been in the works. The article on the Hollywood Reporter specifically said that there was no knowledge of whether this project already exists and Apple's just would be buying it to distribute it, or if it still has to be made. But if it still has to be made, it's, at least in my opinion, it seems unlikely that it would come out before this holiday season. So,
yeah, I'm going to check that out. That sounds ridiculous and hilarious.
And then finally, HBO Max, 2 new kids programming. They tapped some YouTube influencers that have very popular channels. One specifically dealing with creating crafts, and the other one has to do with Karma, which is the series is called Karma. So there's a show called Craftopia and another one called Karma, and they were both ordered straight to series for HBO Max. So that's coming to HBO Max. Moving over to trailers. There's a new trailer for a movie called Claws, an animated movie on Netflix. Tell Me Who I Am on Netflix. This is a new series. The Expanse, the next season of The Expanse on Amazon Prime Video. The Elephant Queen, which is one of the documentaries that's releasing with Apple TV Plus when they launch. That trailer was released. A new trailer for Picard on CBS All Access, and that also had the premiere date announced of January 23rd, 2020. There was a teaser trailer released for Star Trek Discovery for CBS All Access. Lost in Space Season 2 on Netflix not only got a trailer, but also a premiere date, and that's coming on December 24th, 2019. She-Ra Season 4 on Netflix is coming on November 5th, and has a new trailer as well. Earthquake Bird, which is a movie, is debuting on 11/15. I think it's a movie. I could be wrong. That's coming on November 15th.
Not an animal.
It's not an animal. It actually, to be fair, I've watched all these trailers, and Earthquake Bird actually looks pretty interesting. That's coming on November 15th. Breakfast, Lunch, and Dinner, which is it's on Netflix, and it's a famous chef who travels around to a variety of different places with comedians or actors they work on comedy stuff, like Seth Rogen and Kate McKinnon was another one. But they go to different locales and experience the culture because that's what the comedian / actor really enjoys. So that's coming. That's actually coming this month in October. There's a show called Prank Encounters that's coming this month on Netflix, which is the actor from Stranger Things who plays Dustin. He has a prank show that is basically, that's what that is.
Ashton Kutcher 2.0.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. That's what it looked like from the trailer, at least. There's a new documentary done by Netflix. It's the same one there's a new one called Dancing with Birds that's coming later this month. And then finally, another series for Apple TV Plus got a trailer called Truth Be Told, which stars Octavia Spencer and Aaron Paul. He's in that series. That show is premiering on December 6th, and that has a trailer as well. So that is all of the new content. Like I said, there's a lot more trailers than I imagine there would normally be because there was a lot of stuff released in New York Comic Con. So we have links to all those in the show notes for you guys to check out. Finally, over the next week, here's what you can expect coming to some of the services. Over on Netflix, you can expect on October 11th, the El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie, Forest of Love, which is a Netflix film, Fractured, which is a new film, Haunted Season 2, Insatiable Season 2, La Influencia, which is a film, Plan Quar Season 2, The Awakening of Madi Wolbrook, which is a film, Yoo-Hoo to the Rescue Season 2, which is a Netflix family series. October 16th, Ghosts of Sugarland, which is a Netflix original series. And then October 17th has The Unlisted, which is a Netflix family series. Over on Amazon Prime, you've got Costume Quest, which is the Amazon original series. The second half of Season 1 is coming October 17th. Next week, we have Thursday Night Football because they have a deal for that. So you can expect the Chiefs versus the Broncos over on Amazon Prime. Finally, Hulu, you have The Bravest Night, the second half of Season 1 on October 11th. Little Monsters, an original film on October 11th. Letter Kenny, the complete Season 7, is releasing on October 14th. And that's it. That's all that's new stuff that's coming to Hulu. So those are the new items that are coming to those three streaming services over the next couple of weeks. The only thing that honestly interests me is I'm looking forward to El Camino, and I will probably be checking that right away. But outside of that, I honestly, there's nothing else that I'm going to be checking out.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, since we're going over, it's like, let's just inject our opinion.
Oh, completely. Yeah, and obviously, as we have more episodes and we talk about more content, anything that does stand out, we will definitely talk about. I think we had a little bit more news just because we're getting in the hang of things this time around. So
yeah, there's a lot of news, a lot of new content. Streaming wars, it's starting.
Although it has started. We're just here, and we are covering it. So, with all of that being said, obviously this episode went a little bit longer than we typically will go, but like we said, there's a lot of content, and there's a lot of news. Yes, it is. We do say that a lot. We said that for the HBO. I think the only episode we didn't say that for was the Peacock episode, and that one still was longer than we expected it to go. So, yes, in the future, the episodes probably will not be as long as this one, but I can't promise because obviously it's all going to be dependent on how much stuff we actually have to talk about. But hopefully you guys are enjoying the show. If you are, drop us a line at thestreamingwars@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about the Streaming Wars and the content that's coming. Or if you have any content that you're interested in coming about that you want us to mention that's coming up soon, just drop us a line. Obviously, as I've mentioned multiple times in the past, we do have a Patreon. If you are so inclined to support us, we would greatly appreciate that. Your support allows us to produce all of these episodes in a timely manner and have the website up available to host all of these episodes that you guys are graciously taking the time to check out. Our episodes are also available on YouTube and SoundCloud, although if you are listening on SoundCloud, you may be just a little bit behind for the next 2 months because of the limit that we have currently, because it obviously costs a little bit extra to have more capabilities of having the show as soon as we have it. So that all being said, your support on Patreon could allow us to get SoundCloud caught up a little bit quicker. If not, it'll get caught up sooner rather than later. But that all being said, if you are listening to us on any podcast platform, please drop us a review. A 5-star review is always greatly appreciated and helps support the show. Even if you can't support it monetarily, you can help support it by getting the word out, sharing the show with other listeners. that might be interested in not only this content, but the shows that we'll be discussing eventually at different points and things like that. So be sure to share the show as well. You can find us on Twitter. Our individual Twitter accounts are linked on the site, as well as the sites, which is Streaming War, and we're also on Instagram. Now that we're into the news episodes, we're going to be posting more individual updates about episodes as they release, both on Instagram and over on Twitter. With that all being said, but we hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and for Tony and myself, we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the Streaming Wars. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Also consider supporting us on Patreon. Links can be found at thestreamingwars.io.